I'm Kathy Collier. I'm the ClimateWise Program Coordinator, and I wanted to go back in time to more than a year ago. We really were hearing from our business partners that they want more employee engagement and they need more assistance in engaging folks internally within their organizations. And we really wanted to step up the employee engagement piece for organizations. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jenny and Josie. So Dr. Jenny Cross, she's an assistant professor in the Department of Sociology at CSU. She has extensive experience in community development, community attachment, interagency collaboration, changing of social norms, and professional social networks. Her current research focuses on behavior change related to energy conservation. Josie Plout is lead AP, Director of Projects for the Institute for the Built Environment at CSU. She specializes in integrated design, green building, and organizational change as they relate to the adoption of sustainability practices. Dr. Cross and Ms. Plout will discuss the individual and organizational behaviors that foster learning, empowerment, and innovation. We will learn concrete strategies for inspiring your team or your organization to improve your sustainability efforts. So without further ado, we will provide you with the Jenny and Josie Encore.
So today what we're going to do is there were a few of you who participated in a survey that Kathy or Deb sent out, and so we want to talk a little bit about the survey results, and we hope to tie back some of what we're talking about today to the ideas and thoughts that you gave back to us from the survey. We're going to have a couple partner stories. So we'll be hearing from a couple of your peers about the successes, processes, and challenges that they've faced in adopting sustainability. We're going to focus on really two key ideas. We're going to talk about transformational leadership and learning organizations and how those can really be about inspiring long-term engagement and change within your organization. So we're not talking about, sort of a simple event, but really how you start embracing and adopting sustainability as a company ethos or as a philosophy that sort of permeates everything that you do. And based on the survey results, it seems like there's a mix. Personally, I think everyone in this room probably has a pretty strong commitment to sustainability, or you probably wouldn't be here. I'm actually sort of jumping ahead of myself. So let me just say the last thing on the agenda, which is that we'll also give you a toolbox of ideas. So there's some upcoming challenges by ClimateWise and some other resources that we'll present to you. So throughout the presentation today and towards the end, we'll hopefully be giving you a number of concrete ideas and ways that you can help inspire and empower people in your organizations towards your sustainability efforts. Okay, so survey results, the good news. In general, the people who responded had good personal commitment to sustainability and relatively good commitment from the organization. But the specific comments that we got back, we got some more detailed comments, showed within the companies there are still some challenges, and so I'll talk about those in a second. Some areas that need a little bit of work. What we saw is that people struggle with incorporating sustainability into their mission statements. A lot of organizations haven't explicitly identified sustainability as part of their organizational mission. And missions are kind of an interesting thing. How many of you, just by a quick show of hands, could say that you more or less know your company's mission? Okay, that's a pretty good showing. Like your actual mission statement. How many of you could recite your mission statement? Like 5 of you. 6? Okay. So mission statements are sort of a tricky thing because not a lot of people memorize them and know them, but fundamentally every employee in your company should A, know what your mission is, and B, if you want to be committed to sustainability, that needs to be in that first, 30 seconds of explaining what your company's mission is. You need to be able to include sustainability as part of that mission. So if you haven't done that already, then that's probably a place where your organization can do a little bit of work. Learning and sharing information. So there was a question on the survey that asked about how your company learns and shares information. And in that, we're going to spend a fair bit of time today actually talking about ways to improve that. So I'm not going to spend time right now talking about that. And the other thing, which I think is generally difficult, which is moving ideas into action. So people struggle to find ways to take an idea, hey, why don't we do a sustainability management system? Well, that's a great idea, but how do you find the time and the resources and the impetus to actually get that done? So I hope that we'll get to that a little bit as well. About 50% had a sustainability coordinator and or a green team. And we had a sort of small survey size. So if maybe another show of hands, how many of you have either a sustainability coordinator, so a person who's designated to lead up your sustainability efforts, and or a team of people that are focused on sustainability within your organization? Show of hands. So that's a pretty strong showing from this group. So that's actually probably quite a bit more than what we showed in the surveys. And then 20% had a sustainability management system. Raise your hand if you know what that is. Okay, and now keep your hand up if you have one. Okay, so we have 2. Those were probably the 2 people who responded to this survey. So a sustainability management system is a way to actively track and manage the sustainability efforts of your company. It's saying, A, what is important to us, B, what are our targets, and C, how do we know if we're achieving our goals or not? So we'll talk a little bit more about that later as we go on as well. And then personally, I found your specific answers to an open-ended question about what your greatest challenges to sustainability are as being very interesting and very compelling. I sort of had this tugging feeling in my heart of wanting to go to each of the people who responded and talk to them and understand more about the challenges that they face. But the themes that came up were, of course, I bet you could all guess what the number one theme was. If you had to guess, what would it be? Time and money, right? Just a lack of time to dedicate to sustainability efforts, and then a lack of resources. So, and those are pretty universal challenges. I hear that all the time. The next one is motivation and participation, and that's something that we'll be talking about a little bit more today as well. So there was everything from, I work in a very large company, and how do I keep 250 people passionate every day about sustainability, to I work in a very small company, but I can't get buy-in from the owner. So kind of getting people engaged and passionate. And management support in particular came up. So a lot of times sustainability efforts do come from a grassroots level, but then they get stalled or stifled at the management level. If you can't get your management buy-in, then you can only go so far, right? Because then you can't dedicate any time and money to the effort if nobody believes that it's a valuable endeavor for your business. So gaining management support is always a critical piece, and I will not ask you to show who has trouble getting their management to support your sustainability efforts, just because I don't want to put anyone in an awkward position. And so those were kind of the key findings that we got out of the survey results. And now we're going to have Stephanie come up and tell us a little bit about how her organization has attempted to incorporate sustainability into their practices, what some of their successes have been, how they've done it organizationally, so what their processes organizationally have been, and it'll give us some more concrete places to talk about.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Waltz. I'm with Technographics. A lot of people ask, what does Technographics do? And we are a visual information company. Basically, we do GIS, and we're located in Fort Collins, Colorado. We are headquartered, however, in Worcester, Ohio. And so one of my greatest challenges is this very thing. sometimes the culture in Ohio doesn't quite grasp the value in recycling like we do in Colorado. So one of my greatest challenges in embarking the climate-wise culture set is getting buy-in from my corporate, boy, that's not what I meant to come out of my mouth, my corporate management, up to and including my manager who owns the company. So that can be a bit of a challenge as I have goals and as I pitch wanting time and resources from our corporate headquarters. We truly embarked on the climate-wise mindset about 9 months ago, and we've always been a recycling company. Just to kind of give you some background, we've been in Fort Collins about 20 years. We recently purchased a building here about 3 years ago and did a massive remodel. We own about 35,000 square feet. I have about 180 employees, so it's a sizable company for Fort Collins. I would tell you my average age is probably 26.5 years of age. The beauty of that is they really embark on recycling and they want to be a part of keeping a pristine environment. I would tell you the bulk of them are transplants. The bulk of them have come from the Midwest. The bulk of them at one point came through Colorado as a child and vacationed here or knew somebody who lived here or were lured here by the skiing or the fly fishing or, many of the great activities. They're mountain bikers. I'm pretty convinced at this point I could front a bluegrass band. I have a lot of musicians. So the good news is they really like what we do as far as recycling. They're very on board. So, selling why we're doing this has never been a hard thing. So what has happened as time has passed is they have formed kind of a grassroots recycling committee. And all I have told them all along is if you will meet, I will buy you pizza every time you meet, and you put together what you want to do, and we will try to support it. All I ask is that it's a reasonable request and that you put together the numbers and who will support this. And so one of the greatest ideas they came up with was a tent, and it's called a Zero Hero event. And I wish I would have brought the tent to show you, but envision a 2 to 3 man tent that's approximately taller than me and has 3 holes in it, and it accommodates 3 trash cans. And one of it is for waste, one of it's for compost, and one of it's for recycling. And so we debuted this tent at our company picnic, and that was held in July. And at the picnic we probably had, I would say 250 people by the time they brought their spouses and their children. And at the picnic we had, with every hole there was somebody kind of standing there guiding their efforts, saying, nope, that's for trash, nope, that's for compost, nope, that's for recycling. And so at that picnic, we used to overflow probably 4 or 5 trash cans worth of trash. This year, I am proud to say we had 1 trash can full of trash. The rest was recycling and compost. So that was our first big test, and we were very proud to walk away from that city park in Loveland with only filling 1 trash can. The other great thing about that picnic was the younger generation of TGS kids saw how it was to recycle. And I got to tell you, we are having quite a baby boom at TGS. I'm personally afraid to drink the water. And, these younger generational kids are seeing what we're doing as a company to recycle. So I was very proud of those efforts. The other thing I will say is these kids drink a lot of Starbucks coffee. So our compost goal now is to start a compost outside of our backyard, because a lot of them are into gardening too. So we're going to start a compost pile outside our back company yard, I guess you'd call it. So that's our next goal. So what we're finding is the recycling committee is growing as far as goals and what they're wanting to achieve, and we're gaining momentum. And I guess that's a really exciting thing. As far as cost, because we always like to see results as a company and the money savings. Already we've seen $97 that we've shaved off in a quarter. And Gallegos has been fantastic in supporting our efforts and telling us what we've saved as far as the amount of pickups we're needing in any given week and the money we're saving. So, from a company perspective, we're seeing results. The employees are seeing results. The management is seeing results. We're able to share those results with our corporate, and they're liking what they're seeing, so they're going to keep supporting what they're seeing here. So that's our good news. The other thing we're doing is we're researching more eco-friendly cups, more eco-friendly silverware. I just see a continued role of success. And I think as companies are looking to be more cost-effective, we will continue seeking ways to save money and save our environment. And I will be glad to leave these pictures of our little tent if you are interested in looking at it. Like I said, we're a visual company. We like reminders. It's kind of a big thing in our break room, but we have a large break room, so it sits there on a daily basis and it gets full. The committee empties it daily, and so it doesn't stink. It doesn't. It gets emptied daily. So it's something that the employees take care of. The management doesn't have to worry about it, and it is self-sustaining. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to leave the pictures. Thank you.
We want to have you share some stories with each other. This is Josie's humor, the pairs, paired sharing is something that we do in classrooms all the time. Two people talk to each other. Josie's the one, who thinks about fruit when you talk about pears. So you're going to talk to your neighbor. If there's not an even number at your table, it's okay for 3 of you, but I really want you talking in small groups. And the first topic that we're going to discuss this morning is about transformational leadership. But before I really define that and talk to you about all the aspects, I want you all to think about your own experience and share with your neighbor someone that you work with now or someone that you've worked with in the past who really inspires you. And I don't care what they inspired you about. It can be about sustainability or it can be about anything else. We want to talk about the nature of inspiration and the characteristics of people who inspire us. So we're going to give you like 5 minutes to talk to your neighbor. So just turn to your neighbor, and each of you needs to share someone who has inspired you. And I want you to think about what is it that they were able to do that was inspirational to you. Talk to your neighbors.
40 years ago, and I'm just starting to do it again. And the learning aspect of it is that the people who choose to participate in that often have extensive experience internationally. And so they bring to the table not only what you read in 2 or 3 pages of the book. Have you done this before?
So it sounds like you all had something to share. I hope that you all were saying that you knew someone inspiring, not that you have suffered a lack of inspiration in your life. I want to hear some of your stories, so I'm going to actually come down onto the floor and let you talk into the mic and tell us what you said. So if somebody is kind of burning to share, I'd like to have you put your hand up because we need to hear back from a few tables. And if you don't put your hand up, I'm just going to come put the microphone in your face. Okay. All right. I'm coming.
If you're not all inspired by this, you can go home. My 8-year-old, 2 weeks ago, we have a really bad road in front of our house in our whole neighborhood because we own our road. The counties won't fix it. So she's starting her own composting. Not really a business, but she's going through the neighborhood. The people who have the bad road, she's going to give them a bucket and collect $5 a week to get their compost, and all the proceeds are going to fix our road. And she's going to sell the dirt that we make back to the people so they can garden, because there's a lot of gardens in our neighborhood. And she did this 2 weeks ago on her own, mainly because of the clean air people over there. At the last Green Drinks meeting, she talked to them for a while, and then she got inspired by them. And now I'm inspired by her to help her out and carry her buckets for her.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, who else wants to share a story of inspiration?
Good morning. I just moved into a new office and trying to figure out, who's recycling, what are we doing, what's going on in this new office. And I actually found out that we have different people rotating who takes the recycling home with them because we don't actually have it at our office. So we have people trucking recycling to Loveland and to Windsor. So that's pretty inspiring.
All right. So far we have 2 stories of inspiration, and it's people who have taken up the initiative on their own to help really make things happen. So who on this side of the room has an inspiration that they want to share?
Okay, a story of inspiration is leaders or people that you work with who are really wanting to make things improve, sustainability in your business. But they take the approach of being approachable, first of all, because they're not criticizing you, and they are accepting what you have to say, and they're trusting you to go forward with what you can do. And so with that type of a person in a working relationship, a lot more gets done with that type of a comfortable feeling. So when you go forward because you want to save, you're working with someone that is not criticizing and that is not just watching every move you make. And so that came up a couple times at our table, and so we feel that that's a very important issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Okay, I have to tell just a little inspiration myself. I have a 3-year-old son. His name is Gunnar. And I've been trying to get him to turn the light off in the bathroom after he leaves. And so I say, honey, you need to turn the light off. You're wasting power. So I've been doing this for, I don't know, probably since like April, at the Green Summit. So he's finally learned it. And last night we were sitting in my bedroom reading Spider-Man, and the light was on in the hallway and in his bedroom, and you can see it from where we were reading. And he said, Mommy, stop Spider-Man, I'm wasting power. And he ran out of the bed to go turn the light off in his room and then he came back in. And then this morning he found me in the guest bedroom ironing my skirt here, and I had left the light on in the bedroom. I was going to go back in there and finish getting dressed, but the light was on in the bedroom and I was not in there. And he marches in where I'm ironing and he says, Mommy, you're wasting power. I turned the light off for you. It's okay. So just a little cute story from home today. All right. So thank you all for sharing about people who inspire you. And I'm actually really excited to hear that we heard stories of supervisors and of coworkers, our peers, and also of children, because this leads perfectly into what I want to talk to you about, transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is an idea from sociology and from organizational studies about how we lead people in ways that help organizations make change and grow and learn. And the great thing about transformational leaders as people and individuals is that they can be anybody. And so we've just heard they can be 8-year-olds and they can be our supervisors. So that's the one thing I want you all to take away from here, is that every one of us as an individual has the power to inspire others. And it's that power of inspiration that is what makes a transformational leader a leader. Normally when we think of leadership, we think of it has to do with your organizational position and how much power you have and whether you're supervising others. But transformational leadership is about the power to inspire. And so transformational leaders do what they do by demonstrating a personal commitment. I think each of the stories we heard on the floor illustrate that personal commitment. They're role models to others. My son is role modeling to me that I should turn my light off when I'm not in the room. And they encourage us to be creative. I think one of the stories here we heard that people are actually carting recycling to their homes. So we didn't know that's what was going on. That wasn't necessarily the plan. But people who are looking for new solutions and being innovative almost always are doing that through the use of creativity. And often that creativity inspires us. So one of the key things that transformational leaders do is also to connect their identity. Stephanie talked to us about her workers and people from the Midwest who grew up really caring about the environment and being attracted to Colorado for the environment. So protecting the environment is part of their identity, and they're able to connect that to their shared vision, what they want to do as members of that community with their peers at work. So the big idea we want you to think about is that anyone can be a leader that encourages change, that inspires innovation, and helps other people in your organization to move forward and to do new things. And the key things that people in positions of leadership can do is to give people the flexibility and the opportunity to be creative and to make decisions. And I think that Stephanie's story actually shares that very well, that it's the staff who came up with this idea and the plan to have the Zero Hero tent in the break room, and they're the ones that take care of it and manage it. So empowerment is giving people the opportunity to have control and decision making and to identify the issues that are important to them, and also to think about what are the solutions that we can do that will help us get there. So if you're in a position of leadership in your organization, giving people the opportunity to make decisions and to be creative helps them. If you're, just a little person that's hoping that leadership is going to get on board, you're not powerless. You have the capacity to inspire others around you. And inspiration is catching, right? So the little girl we heard about, the 8-year-old, she's not just doing great things for the neighbors, she's also inspiring her dad and inspiring the rest of us. So that when we inspire one person, that story carries. We want to share those stories, and that inspiration spreads out. So all of us have the opportunity to inspire. If we're in a position of leadership, we have the capacity to empower and give people decision-making and the opportunity to be creative. So now, Josie and I promised each other, our promise to you, that today we would be really thinking about what are some specific, concrete ways that you can take these ideas back to your life at work and to your coworkers. Whether you're one of 250 or whether you're one of 5, we want you to think, what can I do when I leave that will help to be more inspirational and encourage more creativity and a greater commitment to sustainability. So the next thing we want from you, you've talked with each other about inspiration. I just told you what transformational leadership is. Now we want to hear from you. What do you think are the behaviors, the concrete things that inspirational people do? What is the action that inspires you? They take risks. What else? Okay, so they have empathy and they inspire you. They encourage change, but they don't tell you what to do. Okay, so their talk is from a place of humility and of something shared rather than knowing more than you do. Okay, so they're an example demonstrating what they preach, right? Like my little kid leaving the Spider-Man story to turn off the light in his room. Okay.
Think outside the box.
They think outside the box. Okay, what else? They're positive thinkers. Okay, they see what we can do and encourage us to think about what is possible. What else? Right. So one of the ways that people express passion is by sharing stories, things that inspired them. Okay, so sharing success and sharing inspiration. Okay. Not afraid to admit mistakes. That's a good one. Okay, so making an opportunity for everyone to participate, not just the people who raise their hands the fastest. They're compassionate. Anything else? They have a clear vision. Okay. Have we captured it? The character traits, the behaviors of inspirational people? Can we just add enthusiasm? I know that passion we put on the list, but I just think that's kind of a key thing. My kid didn't slowly drag his feet as he went to his room to turn off his light. He ran to his room with joy so that he could save power. Okay, so here you have it, a list of behaviors that inspirational people do. They take risks, they have empathy for others, they're encouraging, they're humble, they are an example to others through their own behaviors, they think positively, they're creative, they share stories, they admit mistakes, they're enthusiastic, inclusive, compassionate, and they express a clear vision. So here's this list. Now what we want you to do is think for yourself what things on this list could you do more. And we want you to share, again, with a neighbor at your table. We want you to identify something specific, so that some behavior that you could do at work, a commitment to being more inspirational. So maybe it's sharing an inspirational story every day with one of your coworkers. Maybe it's finding a new behavior to role model for others. But I want each one of you to pick a behavior that is a little outside your comfort zone that you could push yourself to do, maybe you haven't done, or to do more often so that you're mindfully thinking about that when you're at work. So go ahead, talk to your neighbors about your commitment. What behavior for inspiration could you do more of at work?
And we have picked this table to come pick on. You better not walk away now. I know you saw me coming. And you were trying to escape. But if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, would you be willing to share with the group what you said you might be able to do to embody more of the characteristics that you can barely read over there?
So my name is John Stokes. I'm director of the City of Fort Collins Natural Resources Department. And we were talking about the difficulty of establishing a clear vision for your organization, a clear sustainability vision and direction. And that can be complicated in a big, complicated organization like the City of Fort Collins. We have lots of different kinds of businesses, police services, parks, cultural services, streets, utilities, etc. So trying to bring all of those departments together and move forward with a unified vision is a difficult thing to do. So I think that's something we've struggled with at the City of Fort Collins.
Thank you for sharing. How about someone at this table? And I appreciate the sort of the big picture concept and organizational. The challenge here too, if I can get anyone to talk about it, is what you personally are going to do. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Certainly organizationally you need a clear vision, but this is really about what you can do. So we all have the capacity. Now John has the privilege of being in a position where he can probably make a lot of change. You're sort of in that that management level, and a lot of folks here are working at a more middle management or lower level, and so we're talking about how we can get each of us to be more inspiring to others. Because as we demonstrated through our first stories, it can be a child, it can be simple, just your next door coworker, your neighbor. It can really be anyone within an organization who can build inspiration and insight and encouragement within other people. We all have that capacity. So in light of that, is there someone who took that notion a little bit to heart and thought about what they personally can do more of in their organization? I'm standing in this little nexus, so I'm hoping it's one of you close by. What you might be able to do in your organization personally.
What we talked about was that our office is very receptive to doing things to be sustainable and recycling and composting and things like that, but we haven't made it clear. And I've watched things like putting out a compost bin that people don't really follow up with compost. And I thought, this is important to me. What I need to be doing is helping everybody else to be more clear with what needs to be done. When you have recycle bins and trash bins and nobody knows where to put things, and I thought, well, I could put out signs and I could make this more clear and I could take the extra step because it's just personally important to me. So that's what I'd like to do, is see that those things, we have the people and the interest to do it. We have some of the resources. We just haven't had quite enough commitment and modeling. And so that's what I'm going to do, is model it a little bit better and find ways to make it more clear so that everybody can be set up to be successful and they know where to go to do the recycling or where to put the compost stuff and to actually take that one step further.
Great, perfect. That's exactly the kind of ideas or stories that we're looking for. Is it's really easy to sort of say, this is difficult because there are these external forces that are keeping us from doing things. But part of the point that we want you to feel today and to get a sense of is that this is really in your court. That each of you really have some ability to, I'm sure that all of you actually are inspiring people. I'm very confident, actually, that each of you is an inspiring person in your own right. And so part of what we're trying to do is to help you understand the strength of that and the ability that you have to inspire change through your commitment, through your enthusiasm, through your humility, through your ability to take initiative and to tell stories. So if I could maybe get one more person from this side of the room who's willing to share what they can commit to doing to be inspiring within their organizations.
I am newer to my position, and I was telling them that every morning I go to a meeting where the senior management team sits and talks, and they bring in their disposable cup of coffee. So my point is I want to take a risk. So I'm new, but I want to approach them and say, bring a cup of coffee or bring a cup from home and start reusing it every day so we don't have to keep recycling our cups. So.
Great. Thank you. That's great.
So thanks to all of you for talking to each other and for sharing your stories. I do want you to walk away with this list in your mind, the idea that being an inspirational leader does not mean that you have to be some kind of fantastic, charismatic human being that's not in you. That to be inspirational can be something as simple as sharing stories and encouraging people to take risks. So I just want you all to have the idea that it is something that all of us can do, but we have to be thinking about it. And I hope that this list gives you some ideas for the actions that you can take. And I think now I'm going to have to start thinking about what I can do. All right. So the next thing we want to do is to shift so this kind of ends our discussion about transformational leadership. We're going to shift topics, and the next thing we're going to talk about is how organizations change. And we're going to start this new section with a story from Stu Reeve from the Poudre School District, who has agreed to come talk. So come on up here, Stu.
Thank you for having me. Just real quickly, I got 5 minutes or less to try and help you guys understand a little bit of the evolution of Poudre School District. I know you guys are tired of hearing of it, so are we. But just quickly sharing a little bit, kind of maybe taking a look at our green team and kind of talking a little bit about how that evolved. And really, it kind of comes with bond issues that happens with school districts, and so building schools. So a lot of our team back in 1990 was a bond that passed, and we built substantially, grew by about 25% during that time with schools, and learned a lot, seen some good things happen, seen some kind of weird things happen, and a lot of our team, though, stayed intact during that time. And so what we saw happen, really, if you will, is this is the time when we started to look at the 2000 bond and what we were going to do for building schools, and knowing what we learned from 1990 to kind of change that. Some changes in the organization, actually kind of, we fondly refer to it as when the old hippies kind of got a chance to come into power. Okay, so we wanted to do things a little differently. And so we started kind of building our team. We had an energy efficiency team working very closely with partnerships that we had in the community, Fort Collins Utilities, Platte River, City of Fort Collins. Climate-wise, if you think about it, back in 2000, that's when that was happening. Energy Star, that was a partnership that it really kind of came out of the Department of Energy and the EPA's Energy Star program kind of thing. So it was really kind of how could we leverage all these folks with all that knowledge. And everybody that knows me knows that I'm not that bright, but we know somebody that is. And so what we went out and really started doing was building our internal team. So we really took all those folks that were helping us with the 1990 bond, all the facilities, maintenance, leadership positions and superintendents, and all those folks that are still around, and really kind of grouped together to form one mind, one body, if you will, and some goals and some strategies maybe to move forward. And then really reached out to the community and our local resources, looked at local partnerships, resources, things that we could tap into that were folks in the Brendel group was out there, some of those folks that were really on the cutting edge, Colorado State University and the IBE program kind of thing, all those wonderful students with lots of energy. So we could tap out into all these folks. And this was happening in 1999. So as you look at Poudre School District today and think about the evolution, it was building an internal partnership with all of our team to form that one mind, one body, and start thinking about how we could move forward, and then tapping all these resources and going out and researching, looking at this green team formed from there. And the goal was go out and research information, systems, technologies that we could bring into new schools that would make things better for us. And so what it was a whole group of folks internally and externally. And I have to say this external network grew tremendously. And Dr. Cross has been working on that quite a bit. Josie's been a part of that, from the get-go, really, and a lot of this stuff, from materials and stuff that we were tapping into the Institute for the Built Environment with, a lot of those things. But it really spurned from this local, regional kind of thing. We were tapping into the Governor's Energy Office, all those kind of resources in our communities, in our state, that really launched out and went national. And all of a sudden you had all these tremendous resources that came together to kind of really help us. So when we looked at buildings that we were building during that 10-year span from 2000, it was literally a nation that was building these schools. So it wasn't Poudre School District necessarily, it was all these folks from the external resources that were helping us out. But how we stepped through the process of what you're learning today was forming that team and working through that, and then leveraging how we could come back and teach each other. So as folks were going out and looking at technology and coming back, inside of our green team that was not only just Poudre School District, but part of these local resources and national resources. How could you tap into these things and come back, teach us how we needed to really expand our knowledge, drop our fences and walls, if you will, to learn about how we could build buildings or even manage energy and all those kind of things in our school district. So it's really, the things that you're learning today are really what Poudre School District learned, not because we knew what we were doing totally. It was really because of how we evolved and these resources came in and helped us learn. And so if you really think about it, we created our own sustainable design guideline. LEED was fairly new, green chips or the green buildings codes, a lot of those kind of things were all so brand new in 1999 and 2000 that we kind of had to really create our own. Redeveloped it in 2005, tapping into all those resources, and that spurned into this sustainability management system that you see today. All back to some folks in Colorado State University, the Brendel Group, a lot of those partnerships coming in and going, hey, what about doing this next good thing? And the school district was really just willing to learn. And so I think it was all about how we could drop our fences and really learn. And really the important thing of our green team, and the old hippie saying was, drop your egos at the door. It really became not about our egos or anything else. It was how could we do the best for our community with our tax dollars and build good educational environments for our students. And so it's really been an evolution that's kind of spurned through the same things that you're learning today. You're learning it how to sequence it much better. We didn't have a clue, believe me, and we're still learning. I mean, this is really the part where, you know what? It's up on the ballots come November for us again. They're looking at another school bond issue, and we're all looking at each other going, man, we got to regather the troops and start figuring out how this is going to look, good or bad, whether it passes or not. But how are we going to learn from everything we did in the last 20 years, and how can we take this and learn and go forward, and what resources can we tap? So we're constantly learning again because technology changes and our team changes and the resources changes. So it's really an evolution of change that happens almost every time a project comes up or an opportunity comes up for us. So did I do it in 5 minutes or less?
You did great.
All right, thank you.
So we're going to talk about learning now. And again, you see our little sharing pairs here. So we want you back talking to your table again. And we want you to just describe a good learning moment. Describe a moment in which you clearly know that you were learning and that was a good moment for learning. So talk to your neighbors.
How you lose so much of a bottle when they cut
40 years ago. And I'm just starting to do it again. So they bring to the table not only what you read in 2 or 3 pages of the book. Have you done this before?
Now we want to hear some stories from you all about learning. So who wants to share something that they were sharing with their group or their partner about a learning experience?
Hello, I'm Katie Bigner. I'm with Fort Collins Utilities. I was sharing a story about Utilities has a specific sustainability implementation plan that began in 2008, and I was telling a story about how we recently had a refocus with our senior managers. When we developed the plan in 2008, we had 3 different senior managers, and since then we've turned over those managers. And the ones that have come on came on either in the middle or brand new, and we felt like we really needed to kind of refocus the group and bring everyone back on board. And it was actually a really powerful workshop because managers at utilities are very busy and often very maxed out, and they were very dedicated. In the 4 hours, they didn't pick up their BlackBerries. They was very focused on talking about the shared vision of bringing more sustainability into Fort Collins Utilities because our impacts are so large on this community, and it's very important, and the shared vision of the executive director, Brian Janonis. So it was nice to see the managers really kind of build their understanding, the newer ones particularly. I wouldn't say they have not been supportive. They've been very supportive, but they did not have the foundation necessarily from the beginning, and it was just kind of inspiring to be able to share that with them.
So one of the things I heard her say when she was sharing with her group that she didn't say just this moment is that there was a moment in the meeting where she could see the light bulbs going on and you could feel that sense of group learning, that it wasn't just individuals, but as a group they made a shift. And so we're going to talk about that in a minute. But before we do that, we need to hear a couple more stories. So who wants to share a story of learning? Can you come over here so we can be sure that the camera can see us?
I have to shock my partner because we didn't talk about this. Anyway, corporate learning, if that's what we're supposed to talk about. Okay. I'm John, is the name. I'm at a church, Our Savior's Lutheran, and this summer we planted blue grama grass, which is a drought-tolerant native grass, in a couple areas. It got everybody's attention because we first tore up the old grass, so that was gone. We gave away, and Chris over here, Hutchinson, talked to him. He got some of the bluegrass. Then we planted blue grama grass, and we watched it grow. And now it's growing tall, and we have to worry if the city is going to come and complain. But the people in the congregation now, several of them are going to plant blue grama grass and cut down their water use greatly. So I'm learning, they're learning, and we're encouraging, slowly, but encouraging better environmental stewardship, we think.
Okay. Thank you so much, John. All right, one more story. Who else has a story of learning? All right, I'm coming.
Hi. I'm Katie, and I work at New Belgium. And I was recalling a moment where I had a personal transformation where I learned something. It was about a year ago at a workshop that the Larimer County Open Spaces held called Whole Communities. And during that experience, it was a couple of days where we just had, it was a very interactive workshop with several people throughout the community. And through the exercises that we did with each other, I found myself, having this personal transformation within me and realizing, I don't just work for the environment, I also work for people, and sustainability is all three, the triple bottom line, all those things are connected. And I would have those personal revelations inside of me, and then without him, telling me, this is what you should be learning, he crafted these experiences where I felt them inside of me, and then he's talking about, well, then, everything's interconnected. And I'm like, I know, I felt that. I know it is. And so it's just, I really enjoyed that workshop where I felt it, those experiences helped me to feel it before it was actually told to me.
Okay, so one of the themes that I know as a professor and that I just relearned here this moment with you, as I was walking around the room listening to people talk about learning moments, almost everyone, of course we asked you to talk about an experience of learning, but almost everyone talked about learning through experience. They talked about learning from others who had diverse experience and the capacity of that to be brought into a room and to expand the learning that other people have. The story of the blue grama grass at the church is also a story of learning through experience, that the church does something and takes an action, and that is where the learning occurs, not through us talking and telling people that this is how to reduce it, but through doing it. So I want us just to have in our mind about how much learning is tied to experience and the things that we do. So now I want to talk to you about this idea of learning organizations. So the first thing I want you to know is that the term learning organization is a proper noun. It's a name for organizations that are engaged in perpetual learning. And one of the reasons that I asked Stu to come talk to you, even though I know you all have heard from the Poudre School District before, is that they so clearly fit the definition of a learning organization. You can't have a conversation with Stu about sustainability and not have him talk about how they are learning now, how they're always learning, and how they're going to continue learning. That discussion about how what we're about here is learning is the characteristic of a learning organization. And while the school district, we might assume that they should be a learning organization because their mission is education, lots of educational institutions are not learning organizations. So any organization can be a learning organization, and the defining characteristics are that the organization facilitates ongoing learning inside its own organization, among its members, and that through that ongoing learning, they are simultaneously transforming themselves as an organization and transforming the context around them. And so if we think about the school district, they really embody that, right? They have not just changed themselves, but they have changed the context of schooling around them. So the organizational theorists that study organizations and look at learning and think about, well, what are the key characteristics that all learning organizations share with each other? There are 5 of them, and they're listed here on the slide. So the first one is that learning organizations engage in systems thinking. That as they're thinking about their activities and what they're doing in sustainability, sustainability is not an isolated thing. Sustainability is something that they think about in the context of the systems in their organization. And so if you're a tiny organization with 5 people, or you're a big organization with 250, systems thinking looks really different. So there's not one way that I can say to you, oh, this is how you should do systems thinking in your organization. All I can do is say to you that thinking about how the systems are integrated with each other and how sustainability is filtered into your policies and procedures and rewards and your break time activities and your morning coffee routines, that's what systems thinking does, and that systems thinking can help us to become more sustainable organizations. The second thing that learning organizations do is create the opportunity for personal mastery. And Stu didn't really give a lot of details about this. He mentioned it and you've probably heard it before, but the Green Team started off by just asking people to spend 1 hour a week doing research on sustainability. And so some people were looking at heating, venting, and air conditioning systems. Other people might be looking at building materials. Others might be looking at thinking about site orientation of a building. So the sustainability issue that all those people on the Green Team might be looking at were different. I know that in the comments that you all gave us, one of the things that you said is we lack the time and resources to do something. So one of the things I want you to know about learning organizations and about the process of learning in an organization is that it doesn't start by saying we're going to have a learning organization initiative and there are these 5 things that we're all going to jump on board and do right now. Becoming a learning organization is something that can happen one tiny little step at a time, and that is a process that takes place over time. So the first step in the district for the Green Team was spend an hour a week, think about sustainability, and then they had a meeting where they shared that stuff. So that's 2 hours a week. That's not a huge chunk of resources, and that's not something that's unrealistic for any organization to do, to say, hey, we're going to spend a little bit of time thinking in a new way and looking at some new options. What sustainability things are most relevant to us, to our activities, to this organization? So personal mastery. In the school district, another way that they encouraged personal mastery was by creating opportunities for professional development, that all the people working in facilities were given more opportunities for training and professionalism. And one of them that was exciting was sending them out across the country to see these building systems at work. And when those facilities guys talk to their peers in other school districts, they feel kind of proud and excited, because they actually get to travel, which is not something that people in facilities positions usually get to do. And so it contributed to the organizational learning, but it also contributed to personal mastery, the knowledge of individual workers in new ways. So when you're thinking about new initiatives and what benefits do they have, you can ask, how does this benefit individual learning of the members, but also how does it contribute to the bigger learning in the organization? Another characteristic of learning organizations is that they focus on criticizing and undoing their existing mental models. And I'm actually going to pass the mic here to Josie in a second, because I know that she has a lot of opportunity. She's like, oh yeah. That she has worked with a lot of organizations that are working on green building, and one of the big things in the construction industry is getting them to shift their mental model. We do this because we've always done it this way, but now actually to work on green building requires shifting your mental model. So I'm going to give it to Josie for an example.
So we're dealing with shifting the way that people are used to doing things. And so fundamentally we're dealing with change. And it's one of the issues that came up in the surveys that some of you completed. But it has to do with a couple of things. It has to do with consistently, persistently, and repeating why the old mental model doesn't work very well and what the benefits of the new model are. So to bring that down to the ground a little bit more, the design teams and the contractors that we work with have established ways that they typically like to work. They know in many ways how to build a building and how to get it done and how to build it within our current market trends and rates. And so they pretty much think they know what needs to be done. And like I said, in a lot of ways they do. They have a lot of expertise. But when we talk about integrating green building or sustainability into their work, it requires that they challenge some of the ways that they're used to doing things. So one example might be a line item approach. It's very easy to, make a construction budget and to say this costs this costs that, and to look at it piece by piece. One of the things that we have to challenge is not always taking that approach. Sometimes there's the right time to look at it on a line-by-line basis, but other times we need to look at this on a much bigger picture. We need to look at it from a whole systems perspective. So what could we do to optimize the whole building system in order to make it more energy efficient and more healthy? And it's really easy to make that case over and over again about why that's a better thing to do than to make it an energy hog and toxic, right? So I can repeatedly and persistently say, we don't want to make the choice to make this a building that's going to make people sick. We don't want to make this a building that's going to cost the owners a lot of money to operate. We want to make this a building that is going to be efficient and that is going to be healthy. And so being equipped with the right information to repeatedly make that case to change the mental model is one of the things that I have found to be most effective in my practice of trying to engage people in change, is really understanding the issue, understanding why the current mental model doesn't work very well, and the compelling reasons that we have to move to a different mental model. In your businesses, that might be something else. So that may be understanding why sustainability or being green is a really important component for your business. Why that is going to help you from a marketing perspective, why that's going to help you save energy, why that's going to make your employees feel more inspired and more empowered. All of those things may be the case that you need to make about why adopting sustainability as a fundamental practice of your business is important. But being equipped with and understanding the existing mental model and then being able to make a strong case for why a new mental model is going to be better is one of the tools that you can have in your pocket to help urge the upper management to make changes, or if you are upper management, how you can challenge that within the rest of the people in the organization and say, what are the things that are holding us back and what is that ideal or clear vision that we're striving towards? Is that what you're hoping for?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Josie. So just another kind of concrete example about shifting mental models is that everybody in every position in an organization has their own mental model about how a system or thing should work. So I'm a faculty member and I want to share data with people all over campus, and we have these shared drives where we can store data, right? So my mental model is complete access. Everybody should be able to get to it. I need to be able to share my data. I don't want to have 5 virtual desktops so that I can get into 5 different, shared drives, right? So my mental model is ease of sharing. Well, there are some other people on campus who don't have this mental model of the shared drives, right? They're the IT folks. And their job, their mission is security and to keep other people that aren't inside the university outside, right? So some of the things I want to do, they build systems that keep me from doing. So the bigger your organization, the more you're going to have conflict in the mental models between what one person thinks a system should be doing and what somebody else does. So that's the great news about if you're in a small organization, it's easier for you to get on board with systems thinking and changing mental models because you have fewer agendas and fewer competing ideas to work towards. But in order to be innovative and in order to create change and in order to expand, you have to be willing to change your mental models. In the school district, building new green schools meant that people had to give up their idea of what a perfect system looked like. You know, the architects had to be willing to make some changes about the way they did business. The people who, maintained the heating and venting and air conditioning systems had to be willing to change some ideas about what they thought a perfect system was. And the way to do that is through that conversation and interaction. The more we talk to people whose experiences and agendas are different from ours, the more opportunity we have to challenge our own mental model and say, oh, maybe this thing that I think should be like this could be like something else. So this is where a shared vision comes into place. A shared vision is the glue that helps people with different agendas agree that they need to get over their disagreement and find a solution that is mutually agreeable, that both people say, this meets my core issues and my core demands, right? Because fundamentally, the shared drives at CSU are completely useless if they aren't both accessible to diverse faculty across campus and also secure. It's not helpful if my data isn't secure, so it's not my job to make them secure, but I want the people that are in charge of that to also be focused on my agenda, which is making them accessible. So a shared vision is how that happens. If we all have a commitment to, shared information, then we can figure out how to make it secure and shared. So the last thing is about team learning, that when we think about organizations that are learning, what's going on in learning organizations that are facilitating change and encouraging innovation is that the whole organization is growing and that groups of people are learning. So Katie's example about what happened in utilities with the city is an example where shared learning took place. And so one of the things that you can do in your own organization is look at and say, where are the times and places that we make available for shared learning? How could we change our own routines and the processes that we have and the meetings that we have? We're all bogged down by meetings. How could we make those meetings more meaningful by creating the opportunity in them for shared learning that helps us move forward? So these are the traits of learning organizations. Now is the tough question for you all to think about: what opportunities can organizations create for learning? So we made a promise to each other, to you, that we would send you away with some concrete ideas. So here's that part where we get down to the concrete, and Josie's going
So what are the ways that we try to learn as organizations? One of them would be here, right? And I've put this model up here, and I apologize, it's a wee bit small, so hopefully you can all read it. But basically, I'll summarize it a little bit for you, is that the retention that people have through these different kinds of experiences is sort of outlined below. So people, if we just stood up here and gave you a lecture today, your retention of what we're doing would be about 5%. It's pretty slim. You might walk away with a couple of little ideas. You might walk away with the idea of inspire and we need to be a learning organization. Somehow I need to be more inspirational and our organization needs to be learning. And that would probably be the most we could hope you would actually take away from this. So part of what we have done is we have incorporated this notion of discussion groups and trying to get you talking to each other, get you thinking, getting you engaged, because your chances of actually retaining the learning that you're having today increase by you participating and by you talking with each other, and then by us having this larger group dialogue. So that's an intentional design that the Josie Jenny Show put together to say, we need to get these people talking to each other, we need to get these people communicating and starting to discuss with one another, because there are synapses that fire in your brain when you do that I cannot trigger by standing up here with the microphone, right? So I already feel like we've had too long of a stretch with us talking and not you guys talking, because you haven't had a chance to really kind of integrate or understand some of the ideas that we have in place. But before I get back to you guys talking, I just wanted to put this up here. So lectures are a pretty poor way to get people to learn. So I just apologize for lecturing to you. Reading, people learn a little bit more. Audio-visual, so actually sending out video links and having people watch video presentations is a little bit better way to go. Demonstrations, so if you can have someone actually showing you, think of like the cooking show, if you will, That's kind of a demonstration kind of situation, or in the building industry, we might have a product rep come in and show us how something's put together. So that can be a demonstration. Discussion groups. So think of your staff meetings and think about what Jenny was talking about as far as PSD was concerned, where everyone was tasked with spending an hour of time each week learning about something sustainable, and then they brought it back to a group and shared it with each other. So there's two forms of learning that are happening there. They're reading about something, they may be looking at a video about something, and then they bring it back and they have a discussion group about it. And actually, the brilliant thing is that they were teaching others. So they had gone down and they had found out something about a new lighting system, and then they had to bring it back to their group and share what they learned about it. And that's actually the strongest way that you can get people to learn, is by having them teach others. So if there's a way to engage the people in your company with learning about sustainability and then teaching it to other people in the company, then you have some real learning happening. Practice by doing is the only other one that I hadn't talked about yet. And that's just application. That's what we do at IBE. We bring in students from Colorado State University and we get them working on real-world applied green building projects. So it's applied learning. They get to experience the work as opposed to sitting in the classroom and listening to a lovely professor tell them about green building, tell them about green technologies, tell them about the LEED rating system. They're actually able to go out and really figure it out. So I wanted to bring this up because as you go back to be more inspiring and to encourage your companies to be learning organizations, it's important to think about what kinds of activities you might suggest so that you're doing things that are actually going to stick. So having a lunch and learn, while it may have some benefit, is probably not the best way to get your organization learning about sustainability. With that in mind, I've already probably given away some of the answers, but I know that you all are a very creative and thoughtful group, and so I want you to think about specific things, and if someone actually in your group doesn't mind being a little bit of a note taker, to write a kind of a list of the different kinds of things that organizations can do to promote learning about sustainability, but let's just say learning, within their organizations. What are the specific practices? So go ahead and think about it, write it down, and maybe share a little bit with your neighbors.
We use so much of the bottle when they cut them off that doesn't get recycled because they
We're going to do sort of like we did with the inspiring people, and we're going to just write down your feedback. So I'm not going to go around with the mic. I just want you to shout out the ideas that you had. We can just kind of popcorn around the room and take it from there. So what ideas, what opportunities for learning did you guys come up with? Volunteerism. So maybe going to taking staff to a Xeriscape demonstration garden and having them volunteer in the garden. And then maybe there's someone who runs the garden that can help explain some of what's there. So that's definitely practicing by doing, right? So we've gotten nice and far down in there. Great. What other ideas did you come up with? Okay, so a challenge. So make kind of a bit of a game of it and have a photo that has some problems, and then say what's wrong with this photo. So maybe that comes up in a newsletter or in the break room, for example. You put that up and then maybe have people put their entries in a box. See, I can just take this idea and go with it, right? And then the person, and then the person who comes up with the great answer gets maybe even a prize or something. Okay, so just to repeat that out, so at Green Ride they have the leader of the green team is a rotating position, and so everybody has to, pardon the pun, but fill that seat for a while, and so then that puts each person really in a position of teaching others, because usually as the leader of your green team, you are in the position of teaching others. So again, it's a way to spread that commitment throughout the company rather than sort of having your your green guy or your green queen or whatever it is, you have more people that have been engaged in that process. So that's a good opportunity, is to shift responsibility. Yes? So to recap the idea, they did a personal sustainability wellness program, a points-based program, and they got to create their own goals and their own action plan towards what they were going to do. They shared that with their coworkers, and then they were given the opportunity or the latitude to go and attend potentially some presentations or to read some books, and then kind of report back and see how their program went. So that was a way to really kind of empower people, is to say, well, what would you do? To kind of put it back in their plates rather than, telling people this is what you will do. Saying, okay, we think that this is important, but maybe it's individual. And so it's individualized learning in a way. Vendor visits. So bringing in outsiders to the organization and trying to make sure that those people who come in are going to be more in that demonstrative category, so that they're not just coming in and maybe giving a talk, but making sure that that's participatory and engaging and a little bit more interactive. So the example was the Rocky Mountain Sustainable Living Fair added a Children's Day. And the idea is about being inclusive. And so how do we bring in more people into the mix, if you will? And sometimes really amazing things can come out of that. So mixing it up and bringing in new folks is a way to bring in fresh perspectives and fresh ideas. So the idea is taking the notion of transformational leadership back to others in the organization and helping to go back to the idea of sort of spreading the responsibility out among workers, and in the same way that we're trying to help each of you understand that you can be inspirational and transformational leaders regardless of where you are in your organization, that to take that idea back to the people in her organization and show them that we all have the ability to lead and inspire, and that this isn't sort of out of your reach or out of your hands. Oh, one more idea. Go ahead. So to repeat the key idea there, it's about she works in a very small organization with only 6 employees, and so she doesn't think that she could pass the pass the baton every month to a different person, but that maybe there's a way to take that PSD model of just little bits of information and then having those individuals come back and report out at a staff meeting and then be able to learn and share that way. So I think that those are all really helpful and meaningful ideas to think about creative ways that we can promote learning within the organizations. And then it's amazing what happens when people go out and learn about this for themselves, because then they start to become champions for it. So when someone has gone out and found out about a new technology, they actually get excited about it when they're sharing it to the group, and then they take some ownership of it. So some neat things can happen there. So of course the next question is and I think some of you have kind of gotten there, but if you haven't done it already, or maybe just try to jot down a few more ideas, and I would encourage this to be actually a little bit more of a personal activity, so not so much sharing, but just to take a couple minutes to write down what you could do in your own organization to create some learning opportunities and move toward this idea of becoming more of a learning organization, or enhancing the learning organizational qualities that you already have within your firm or your company. So go back and just kind of write down a couple ideas that you have for how you could create learning opportunities, kind of based on the sharing that we had here. So we had volunteerism, demonstrations, the photo analysis challenge, rotating responsibility, goal setting, personal challenges, so sort of that personal point system, vendor visits with show and tell, being inclusive, spreading ideas and responsibility, and kind of a notion of empowerment there, and delegation. So kind of build off of those if you can to come up with specific things that you think you could do to promote learning within your organization.
I just want to hear from a few people what things you think you can do in your organization. Yeah. Okay, so you have a weekly meeting, and in that meeting you have a sustainability moment. where you talk about sustainability. And you said that you're going to ask for people to help you with that. So does that mean you're going to ask people to talk during it or to help you kind of organize and facilitate? They do that one. So you're going to sign people up and say, it's your job to do the next sustainability moment, and then give that responsibility to somebody else the next time. Okay, shared responsibility. And an opportunity for, we know that people learn from hearing and sharing other, stories, so that's an opportunity. The moment itself in the team meeting helps to create a place for group learning. All right, another one. Okay, so discouragement is really destructive, and so what he's suggesting is to encourage, if you look at someone and are feeling disheartened because they're not doing much recycling, as long as they're doing one thing, encourage the one positive behavior that they're doing, because that is the ripple that spreads out more stuff. So stay away from the discouraging, what people aren't doing, and just focus on encouraging the behaviors that you want. Okay. Other opportunities for learning in your organization. Things that you know that you can do to help expand the ripple of learning. Okay, so after any kind of event, to do kind of a sustainability debriefing. What went well? What could we do differently? How could we expand it? So this is one of the things that we know about learning. Organizations who learn, they always say that we could have, done things better, and all the activities that we engage in are opportunities for learning. So having a debriefing on them and saying, what can we do differently, is a great place for encouraging group learning, and that can also create the opening, the opportunity for shifting mindsets and saying, oh, it hadn't occurred to us that maybe we could think about this differently. So that could, affect more than one of those realms of organizational learning. All right, thanks so much for sharing your own commitments. I hope that you walked away with some concrete ideas for things that you could do or things that you can encourage in your organization. As part of our commitment to helping you walk away with some concrete and tangible things to do, we want to talk to you about some tools that are available to you. So I'm going to pass it off to Josie, and she's going to talk to you about some tools that are available that might be useful for individuals, and others that might be more useful for organizations, and some both.
Thanks. So I like to think of myself as having kind of a toolbox of resources and skills and references and materials that I can pick and choose from, because each situation is going to be a little bit different. And sometimes I need one tool, sometimes I need another tool. You can't build a hammer with the house alone. I think I've been talking for too long this morning. You cannot build a house with a hammer alone. You need a whole set of tools in order to be able to construct your home. And I think of doing sustainability work in the same kind of way. You need to have a whole set of skills and ideas and resources at your fingertips so that you have the right tool for the job when it comes up. So we're just going to try to give you a couple different things. I'm going to talk about the One Planet Living Guide, and then actually Kathy is going to talk about a couple of upcoming programs and city initiatives that you can add to your toolbox. So this is one of the things that I found recently that I've become really, really excited about. It's called One Planet Vision. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of your ecological footprint and how many Earths it would take to support your lifestyle. So pretty good number of you. This is actually kind of based on some of the same research, and it's saying if we wanted to live within the means of this one planet and the one resources that we have, what would it take? And they've come up with 10 guiding principles. Quickly, zero carbon, zero waste, sustainable transport, local and sustainable materials, local and sustainable food, sustainable water, natural habitats and wildlife, culture and heritage, equity and fair trade, and health and happiness. And for each of these, if you go online to oneplanetvision.org, they have a free sustainability toolkit. And if you remember this morning, I talked a little bit about sustainability management systems. Well, this is kind of an SMS in a box. Okay? They've got one workbook that has some ideas for things that you could do in each of those 10 categories. So specific action steps and a way to kind of cross-check your efforts and say, well, geez, we're already doing this. That's pretty good, but we hadn't thought of this or we hadn't thought of that. So it gives you a lot of ideas for things, actionable items that you could do in each of the 10 category areas. And then the other thing that's provided in the free toolkit is basically an action plan, a workbook that you can go through and you can say, this is what our organization would like to do in each of these areas. And you can choose to just pick, a few of them to focus on at a time. Maybe 10 is too many things. Maybe, you're one person in a small organization and you can't have 30 initiatives going at one time. Maybe you're one person in a large organization, you can't have 30 initiatives going at a time. That's all fine. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. You can just go in and you can say, okay, these are the top 3 areas we'd like to work on, and these are 3 things in each of those areas that we'd like to try to do in the next 6 months, 12 months, or whatever. And so it kind of helps you to identify what are the things you'd like to do, when would you like to do them by, what resources will you need to get them done. And I've just been really impressed with sort of, it's very visually appealing, it's very simple, it's very straightforward, and it's free. So that's all really good. You do just have to put in your contact information, and I haven't received a single email from them. It's more that's how they justify giving it away, is by how many people download it. So anyway, that's one of the things that I've been excited about lately. If you want to look at sustainability in a big picture, I've heard a lot of talk about recycling today. I'm all for recycling. It's a good thing. But sustainability is really a pretty broad topic, and it goes into not only environmental sustainability, but also into social and cultural and human well-being issues as well. And so this is a way to maybe deepen some of your thinking about sustainability and what you can be doing. So I wanted to point that tool out, and then Kathy's going to come up and talk about a couple of other city programs that you may be able to engage in as well.
Okay, in reference to the partner level requirements for ClimateWise, at the silver level, you can take a credit for implementing an employee challenge as your project, a new project implementation. So that is one piece. The second piece is at the platinum level, you are required to implement 2 employee challenges per year. The reason this came up and the reason why we have this requirement is during 2006, our advisory committee asked us to continually raise the bar for the platinum level. And one of the pieces that we felt back then in 2006 that we were missing is this employee engagement piece. And what you're required to do is implement one short challenge. It could be a Bike to Work Day challenge and one longer challenge over a month or 6 weeks or a longer period of time. So to sort of institute kind of an employee behavior change. So you can either A, implement your own challenges, and I know some of you have done that, and then you have to log them into the My ClimateWise self-management database. Or B, we have 3 turnkey challenges available to you from different departments. And I wanted to start off and have Marcy, Barb, Jean raise your hands. We have the Fort Collins Utilities Department has the Efficiency Challenge, and some of you are participating in this. It's a wonderful challenge where you should go on over to their booth and talk with them. They will come over and conduct a presentation. They will offer and talk about education and ways to conserve energy and water at your business as well as at your home. Employees can become empowered through behavior changes at work, and they'll help you set some goals. And they have this great environmental footprint poster and ways to, in essence, kind of magnify your education efforts at the business, so they can put out these posters for you at the business, etc. Secondly, there's a new pilot from the Natural Resources Department called the Starve Your Trash Challenge. There are 2 versions for this. There are businesses and restaurants, a version for businesses and restaurants. And the baseline, they're asking that people participate. The baseline begins September 14th. And the challenge will require a champion to conduct a brief audit of recycling and related activities, such as changing the paper counter on your copier to set a baseline and looking at the junk mail that comes in, etc. And then a list of all pre-activities, an easy audit checklist, recycling guides, instructional materials are available. over at the natural resources table. So each company that participates will be eligible to receive a green prize. So that's one new program. Also, the North Front Range Metropolitan Planning Organization, Jeff is right over there. Raise your hand. There you go. They have a new web portal with a tracking mechanism that's really easy to use. It's a tracking mechanism for employees who use alternative transportation. And what's nice about it is you can just click on a bike or walk symbol, for instance, and drag and drop it into the date of the calendar. So it's very easy to use. So these are some really easy tools that we hope that you can take and turnkey, and you have city staff to support you in your efforts if you don't want to create your own challenge. And just some simple tools for you. So please let these folks know if you have any questions. And again, you have to report those with us in the My ClimateWise database, but we're all here to help. And it's easier than you think it might be. So thanks.
Okay, so we're pretty much wrapping up. We just wanted to leave you with the closing thoughts. So what we're hoping that you will take away from this today is that we can all be inspiring transformational leaders within our organizations. And we hope that you understand some of the characteristics that are embodied in being an inspiring leader within your company. We hope that you have taken away something about being a learning organization, and that engaging in sustainability has to do with having a commitment to learning all the time. It's a very vast and expansive field, and every time you think you know what you're doing, you'll realize that you don't. And that's okay. What's more important is that you have processes in place to continue that learning process, just like Stu was talking about, how they don't feel like they've arrived. It would be really easy for Poudre School District to pat themselves on the back and say, we've done a very nice job and we know how to do this, thank you very much, and it's time to, pack up our toys and go home. But they take the approach that we are not done learning, we have just begun learning, and now how can we do better than we did last time? What is the next step? Where is the next place that we can go with this? So this is really a journey. It's not a destination. The events and challenges, they can help kind of get you along the way, but you're never going to be there, right? It's always going to be a process that you're working towards, continual improvement, continual achievement. And then we also hope that you have walked away with some tangible, practical things and ideas that you can take back to your organizations for creating more inspiration and for creating more learning opportunities.
Thanks, Josie. So I just have a couple of comments of my own. One, I want to make a commentary on one of the things that Stu described about the green team, which is that they were learning inside their own team, and then they drew on their external partners, and their external partners really pushed them and helped them to grow. And I could do a whole day's lecture for you all on interagency relationships and networks and how those contribute to learning. But the truth is that small groups inside organizations can really push innovation. And so if you're in a small organization, you have a really easy opportunity towards being innovative because you're small and well integrated. Large groups also have that capacity to bring in new ideas because of their diversity. And so I want you all to think, hey, one of the things that might be an opportunity for my organization for learning and for sustainability is maybe not just the resources inside my own organization, but to start looking outside and thinking, what partnerships could we have? And if we really don't know anything about something, who are the resources in this community that we could learn from? Because as you all know, in this room, there are lots of resources here. So just a little idea for you to carry away and think about. Learning could happen within, and also could happen through our connections with others. And I hope that all of you are walking away with a couple of concrete ideas for the things that you could do in your organization. We encourage you always to communicate with Kathy and everybody else from Wendy and Deb from ClimateWise, and to give them feedback on how useful this session was for you and what other things you would like us to do, because they are, and Josie and I are always committed to trying to make sure that the presentations and materials and challenges and things are really useful to you and to help you grow. So that's it.
Thank you.
at this time, I'd like to have our committee chair people come up on stage. Here, when I just get ready, I guess. A little bit of background in regard to the ClimateWise committees. I have to read off of my slide. We began the ClimateWise Advisory Committee during the fall of 2005. And I love working with the ClimateWise Partner Advisory Committee, and I love the entire concept because these are the folks who really provide input into the ClimateWise business operations, and this is not simply a government-run program. We like hearing from you, from the ClimateWise partners. So at any time, at any point, if you have suggestions or comments, we welcome those. But our advisory committee also had done quite a bit of work in beta testing our databases and providing input in advertising operations, providing input into our levels and our structure over the years. And if any of you folks here who have been on an advisory committee, could you please raise your hand? I'd like to give you a round of applause. Thank you so much for all of your work in the past. One of the areas also actually it was during 2006, we had an advisory committee who had asked us to continually raise the bar with the platinum level. So that is something that was an exciting challenge for us, and we like to be challenged, and we like to continually improve the program. So I wanted to note these just few highlights over the last few years of the advisory committee. Next, ClimateWise today, we've grown to more than 230 businesses rapidly, and we had more than 45 businesses want to serve on our advisory committee, which was not a workable number. And what we had decided to do was survey our business partners back last spring to determine how to break the ClimateWise advisory committee into workable groups. So based on your input, we are dividing our committee into 4 areas. We held a kickoff with the Trebuchet group, and are they here right now? I wanted to publicly thank Chris Hutchinson and Diana Hutchinson. Oh, can you stand up? Am I embarrassing you? I just want to say thank you so much for all of your facilitation efforts and ideas throughout this. We held a kickoff and broke into these committees, and I'd like to announce the committee chair people and have them come up for a photo. You don't have to say anything. So initially, I'd like to talk about the advisory committee. We're going to have Kyle Glidewell from Waterpik chair this committee. The advisory committee is still going to have the same mission. It's for seasoned partners who are responsible for overall program growth management, partner-level guidelines, continued development of the My ClimateWise tool. We're going to be beta testing some of our Phase 2 work, so this is a little more technical. So Kyle has an IT background at Waterpik, and he was perfect for the job. So thanks, Kyle. If you could stay up here. Our mentoring program is Jerry Becker from Woodward. We really appreciate this. We've piloted a mentoring program in the past, but we need a little more structure and a little more oomph behind the mentoring program. The mentoring program, or committee, will help develop guidelines in the program database to help match mentors and mentees. We also have a number of partners just out there mentoring and helping us. So we have kind of the structural model as well as the model where people are mentoring out there and helping the ClimateWise partners go through the partner level requirements and the process. So thanks, Jerry.
You mentioned more oomph. I don't know if you're getting oomph.
You're getting oomph. Don't worry. I'm getting oomph from you. Don't worry about it. We also have, we've had many businesses ask to be just praised for their corporate social responsibility. And even though this isn't necessarily a ClimateWise area that we work on. Our highlight is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but we feel that this area is very important to have the businesses who are out there doing CSR work to basically have a showcase for their efforts as well. So the CSR committee will help develop program guidelines that align with corporate social responsibility in just the advertising arena. And the person who is chairing this is Anna Arias from Primal Echo. Thanks, Anna. This is great. And lastly, we are working on an ambassador committee. We have some folks who are interested in chairing this. The ambassador committee will help the ClimateWise staff further, magnify our efforts and really leverage the efforts of the business partners. And we are so grateful for this help. But the Ambassador Committee will help develop recruitment guidelines for partners, and they'll, in essence, we've heard, again, from a lot of you about employee engagement and engagement in your workplaces and organizations. So this committee will help you with engagement within your committees and organizations. So we don't have anybody who, we've got a number of people, so that is to be announced. But just to let you know that we have this fourth committee, an ambassador committee, that we're going to be starting as well. So thanks to the three of you, and just if you could stay for a minute and have your photo taken, I'd appreciate it. Thanks. Before our luncheon keynote speaker begins, I just wanted to take a few moments to celebrate our 10th year with you and thank the many people who have contributed to the success of the program. Looking back to 2000, I was working for another city department when the ClimateWise program began, and I remember thinking that this program is truly special. And now, years later, it truly is a privilege to work with you, the ClimateWise partners, and to work with all of the city departments and organizations that help support the program. I also remember how forward-thinking it was of the city staff and city council to approve the local action plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions during 1999 and further develop the climate action plan during 2008. And the new Fort Collins community carbon reduction goals are to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 20% below 2005 levels by the year 2020, and an 80% reduction below 2005 levels by 2050. And as Stephen will probably mention, there are many benefits addressed through climate protection, such as economic development, environmental protection goals, cost savings, and for you, public recognition to boot, and many more. And Lucinda Smith has been the city staff lead on this effort, and I encourage you to stop by her booth and ask questions about the Climate Action Plan and to view the Climate Status Report on the website. And this is a quote that she had in the Climate Status Report and in her presentations. Now, fast forward to 2010, ClimateWise has grown to more than 230 business partners, and you, the partners, make a huge difference in the community, as you can see from the next two slides. These are cumulative savings through 2009, so from 2000 through 2009. All of those, even small or big, projects that you report in the database add up and make a huge difference. So we just want to say we really appreciate all of the work you do. These are from last year. We had nearly 1,000 projects logged into our database from 2009 alone. And this is why your partnership is so important for the community under the guidance of our Climate Action Plan. Your reporting and participation help not only your credibility with your employees, customers, citizens in our community, but it also helps our ClimateWise program's credibility with our stakeholders, such as City Council and City Management, as well as it helps move the Fort Collins community further toward its goals under the Climate Action Plan guidance. So I just wanted to say from my heart, thank you so much. We're so grateful for all of your support and for all that you do in the community. If there's anything we need to do for you in the future, certainly we're here to help. But I just wanted to thank you so much from the city of Fort Collins, really, and from the community. So give yourselves a hand. I'm so proud to welcome Stephen Saunders. Stephen was our keynote back in 2006 at our first fall fair, which is really a small venue, but he really had a wonderful presentation, and even the Coloradoan wrote about him as well. So Stephen is the founder and president of the Rocky Mountain Climate Organization, which works to reduce climate disruption and its effects in the interior West. In an earlier career in government and politics, Stephen served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Interior over the National Park Service and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He was also National Policy Director in the 2004 presidential campaign of Governor Howard Dean, and he was involved in 4 other presidential campaigns. He served as senior staff positions in the U.S. Congress, including Executive Director of the Leadership Office in the House of Representatives, and as an advisor to Senator Gary Hart and Congressman Tim Wirth and David Skaggs, all of Colorado. Stephen is a graduate of the University of Denver College of Law, and we're so thrilled to have him here. He's just wonderful, and you'll get to see for yourself. Please welcome Stephen Saunders.
Thank you very much, Kathy. It is a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here, actually, and it's especially a pleasure to come back a few years after having made a similar talk and see how many more of you are now here. And I want to talk a little bit more about the importance of who you are and what you do. First, let me mention that my organization is a coalition of partners, and I always want to give a shout out to them. And we have local governments listed in the size of the population they serve, but let me emphasize that Fort Collins is not at the top of the list, but Fort Collins was the first of the local governments to join as a partner with us. In part, that's because we asked first, but also because Fort Collins decided to step out ahead. Other local governments as well, Denver Water, the largest water provider in the state, businesses and nonprofit organizations, all of whom have come together to try and address this major issue that is facing us, with particular ramifications for us here in the West. Later in your life, you may get asked a version of the question, what did you do in the war, Daddy? Or what did you do in the war, Mommy, about the war against climate change? And I'm here to say, I consider you heroes in this war. So if you take away one thing from what I say today, take away the memory that decades down the road, you can say, some guy from a climate group came and called me a hero for what we were doing. Because that is the God's truth. If we can get more people to do what you are doing, we will win this war. Most of what I want to talk about is why what you're doing matters so much. You know that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and every other body that has looked at it says the climate is getting warmer. Most of the climate change that is happening, most of the warmth that has happened since the middle of the last century is because of what we are doing. We are changing the climate. And when the IPCC says very likely, that's a very high standard. That's with a 90% or greater likelihood. You probably know all that, but I always want to start there. What many people do not realize, though, is that if we were not warming the climate would be naturally getting colder right now. The top figure here, and this is from the IPCC again, the red line, the dark line in there is observed temperature change. The squiggly pattern is the combination of model results about the consequences of natural variation from natural factors that scientists understand, like volcanoes and other things, and human emissions. The models looking backwards match up pretty darn well with what has been happening. In the bottom figure, what we have instead is just natural variation. And the modeling would suggest that we would be getting colder since the 1950s. That's what the line is in the bottom. Instead, we've gone markedly higher. That is what we people are doing to the climate. This is 100 years of global temperature variation, and clearly it's done by decades. Simplifies a little bit from all the zig lines you get up and down from an annual variation. We've clearly gone from colder than average to hotter than average. The average in this case is 1950 through 1979. Any baseline that you pick would produce a similar kind of graph. The planet as a whole is about 1 degree warmer in the last decade than the average of the base period that is used here. That's the globe. This is Fort Collins. Same scale. Fort Collins, and this is a single weather station, so I don't want to make too much of it, but let's talk about it is happening here. It is not just happening around the globe. The last decade of Fort Collins was 2.5 degrees hotter than the same average in the previous graph. Again, scales are the same. It is happening here. If it keeps happening, we are not very far away from getting to what the U.S. government calls impacts that are severe, widespread, and irreversible. And what they're talking about is just an additional 2 degrees increase compared to the 1980-1990 levels. So not the last bar, but the 2 before that. So we've already gone up a good 0.5 degree globally from that benchmark, another 1.5 degrees, and we start to get in the range of severe, widespread, and irreversible impacts. These are some of the scenarios about what we may face in the future, how temperature may continue to change. To the left of the vertical line, before 2000, we have observed temperature. Before that, after that, we have different scenarios about how temperatures may change. There is a substantial degree of uncertainty about how much more we're going to get hotter. Very clear we're going to get hotter. How much more is dependent on 2 things. How much we continue to pollute, and how sensitive the climate is to the pollution that we put up. I'm going to mention 2 of these scenarios. A2, the red line on the legend you see, which is at the upper end of the scale, and B1, the blue line that is lower. Now, there are other scenarios that would produce higher emissions, others that would produce lower emissions, but it's helpful to say what happens if we're at the higher end, what happens if we're at the lower end. And this is not at the extremes. This is just to try and illustrate some of the range. So I did climate projections, which is not hard to do. These things are now online, and figure out how to work them. You can produce climate projections. Thinking ahead to the time when your children, your grandchildren may be asking you, what did you do in the war? Well, this is what the war could be looking like depending upon how things go. And this has taken results from 16 different climate models. In the lower emissions scenario, the range is, compared to 1980s and 1990s, Fort Collins could be 1.7 to 6 degrees hotter, annual average compared to that baseline. The average of those 16, 3.7. Higher emissions instead, still a range, the range is higher, could be as much as 8 degrees Fahrenheit, the average over 6 degrees Fahrenheit. To help you understand what that means, a few degrees may not sound like that much, the lower emissions makes your climate same as Pueblo's. Higher emissions, Albuquerque, New Mexico. These differences are substantial. Now, I don't think we need to get to either of these scenarios, and that's why I'm here to say you are heroes, because the things that you're doing will keep us from getting to either of these if we do more of that with more people doing it. If we have changes like this, we're going to have a variety of impacts. I'm just going to talk about a few of them in this talk, but again, what I'm trying to illustrate is why what you're doing matters. We have a lot at stake here. Much of it is similar to what's happening around the world. Much of what we have at stake is kind of peculiar to our circumstances here in this special region where we live. Let's begin with heat waves. This is a map from the U.S. government. The visual is kind of striking, just all that red. What this is to take the hottest day in any part of the continent that is experienced in 20 years. So in Fort Collins, that's probably 103 degrees. Only happens once every 20 years. In fact, it's only happened once. That's the hottest day that has been recorded here. 102 was recorded prior to that a couple times. And say, how often will that event happen? Once every 20 years now? once every 2 years. Once every other year is what this is showing by the end of the century. So that's just one small measure. As the averages go up, the changes at the extreme are going to be even greater than that. Let's talk about what it does to our snow. Very much part of what makes Colorado the special place that it is. These are individual snowpack measurement sites run by the government and showing a trend in the 20th century with each circle representing either a decrease in red or an increase in blue. And clearly you see a whole lot more red than you see blue. The size of the circle indicates the magnitude of the trend over that period, with the largest scale being an 80% decrease in the snowpack over that period of time. And I've heard the lead scientist in this effort say that the blue, like in Southern California there, is more a matter of where you started out, and if you started with a different beginning point, you could get some red circles there. But that's going to happen with any particular period that you understand. We are clearly getting less snow. That will affect skiing, obviously. The city of Aspen did an assessment about what all this may mean to their skiing there, and just in another 20 years, the ski season may already be 10 days shorter. Toward the end of the century, at the end of the century, it may be a whole lot shorter. And somewhere in there, you run into a problem of, yeah, there may be enough snow in the middle of the winter, but is it profitable for a ski company to run a ski resort? This is a director of sustainability for the Aspen Skiing Company being quoted saying, if you chop off March, we're out of business. And March is only losing 4 weeks. It's not losing the 10 weeks that we could be losing. So skiing is obviously vulnerable. The biggest consequence of loss of snow is our loss of water. That, as we know, is our most precious resource out here. Again, changes are already occurring. Snow melt is happening earlier in the year. The darker reddish circles are the ones where the snow melt has begun to happen earlier. The black circles where the snowpack has been melting later, there's very few of those. And we've seen a trend towards 2 weeks or so of earlier snowmelt. And this is a projection of what could happen to the hydrograph, to the flow of the water in the Green River, the main tributary in the upper Colorado River Basin of the Colorado River. And the black line, you can clearly see when the peak flow occurs. And the projection is the peak flow will occur sooner. It will also be lower. And the summer is going to be a lot drier because the water flow is going to have been moved earlier. A lot of environmental consequences of having a drier summer. This is, and almost, I think everything I'm putting up here is from the U.S. government, not from some wacky organization, if you will. This is a projection of spring precipitation changes in the Southwest. And the hatching indicates a high degree of confidence, and the dark color indicates the degree of the change. Big difference whether we have lower emissions or higher emissions. That's true across the board. The more we bring down emissions, the less consequences we have. What we're looking at in the spring, though, in the lower part of the Colorado River Basin, is a much, much, much drier spring. And the basic driving factor behind that is that storms are being driven to the north, that tropics are expanding and storms will move farther away from the equator, and they'll move out of this region entirely. This is relevant to us because the people getting so much less rain are in the same Colorado River Basin that we are in, where we get our water, and there is an interstate compact that allocates water among everybody. It's not just that we get it because it falls here. We are obligated to provide it to them, to share it with them. Here's another projection. This is now not spring. This is the entire season. This is river basins, and the hatching, again, indicates confidence, and it's how much total change there could be in runoff of these different river systems. The dark red is the lower Colorado River Basin, and you can see that it's showing more than a 20% reduction in the runoff in the lower basin, a reduction in the upper basin, not as much, but again, we are in this basin together. One of the several studies that has been done has looked at how often we may face a shortage in the Colorado River Basin, how often we may run into a situation where we have water restrictions that are basin-wide in order to spread around the water under the governing compact. And this is showing toward the end of the century that we could have shortfalls under the compact 38 to 42% of the time, very often, 4 out of 10 years. One of the consequences, of course, is our ecosystems are vulnerable to disruption. The mountain pine beetle is a natural force. Beetles live in our forests. They always have. What we're seeing with them is one illustration of a natural force giving an unnatural boost by climate change. And the relationship, as you may well know, is that the natural check on the population of beetles is winter cold. And it works in a number of different ways. If you have sustained long periods of cold, you lose lots of them. If you have short, intense periods of cold, you lose lots of beetles. They don't all overwinter, and so the population is held back. We are not seeing the same winters that we have used to see. This is one weather station again. Don't want to make too much of it, but it's the first one that I found that had, in our beetle area, that had a sufficient record to put up. Same scale as what I had before. This is low temperatures, minimum temperatures in winters, December, January, February in Grand Lake. Winters are warmer. There's been a greater change in that than there's been in average temperatures. The low temperatures have gone up more than the high temperatures have gone up. The nights are not as cold as they used to be. This change has opened the doors to the mountain pine beetles, again, a natural force until this happened. This is 1996, and this is showing the beetle infestation. You're not seeing it yet because it wasn't there. That's a natural background, if you will. And I think you can see where Fort Collins is up there. Clearly see where Rocky Mountain National Park is. And I will go through it year by year. You didn't notice it, but there's starting to be some red. Now you can notice some red. The red is the spread of the mountain pine beetles. The blue that just popped up in Routt National Forest is a different beetle, spruce beetle. Same dynamic. The Colorado State Forest Service, here in Fort Collins, and the U.S. Forest Service, what's it been, 2.5 years ago, said all of our mature lodgepole forests are going to die. Now, I actually would say that all the mature trees are going to die. Forests will, in fact, regenerate. But how long and what will come, I'm not sure. And they're not going to be the same for a long time. And this may be one of the things that prompts your children and your grandchildren to say, what did you do in the war? You know, when these trees have all fallen and new things are growing, but it's not the same forest that we have known up there. This is a result of a hotter climate. Beetles used to take 2 years to have a complete life cycle. Now they're doing it every year. Sometimes they're having 2 complete life cycles in a single year. They used to be held within a river basin because it would be too cold for them to spread over. No more. They're going over. They're going over the ridges. This is a materially different thing because of climate change. Another impact, wildfires. And there's one broad study that everybody relies on, looks at one 17-year period, the most recent 17 years when this was done versus the 17 previous years, and the differences are quite striking. The wildfire season's much, much longer than it used to be. We have more fires. They are bigger and they take longer to put out, and more acreage is being burned. I'm not going to say that the 4 Mile fire right now is the result of climate change. You can't say any one event is. The pattern that has changed so drastically, however, clearly is the result of the changes. The scientists doing this study strongly correlated all these increases with warmer spring temperatures, drier summers, all the things that we're getting as a result of the pollution that we're putting up in the air. And folks who fight fires are not skeptical anymore. They know that climate change is, in fact, very real. So let's get back to what I had up earlier, that another 2 degrees could get to severe, widespread, irreversible impacts. Can we head that off? To do this, we will need to really bring down emissions. We'll have to hold them at about today's level. That's a real challenge. I think it can be done. I think what you're doing is an important part of making that happen. Again, back to the scenarios. What we really need to be doing is getting down to that bottom line, not to a lower emission scenario, which is quite a bit higher, let alone to that higher scenario. It's only if we get up in that range that we begin to get this place having a climate like Albuquerque or anything like that. Those scenarios are just based on how the future might unfold if we don't get serious about addressing climate change. If we don't get serious about addressing climate change. Those are different scenarios that assume different population growth, different technology development, different spread of technology, lots of things. Nowhere in those scenarios is a decision by the governments and the peoples of the world that we're going to keep this from happening to us. We can make that decision. I quote this everywhere. You probably don't recognize it. There are many reasons why I'm optimistic on this, and this is the biggest one, because the things we can do to reduce emissions have all kinds of great benefits to us. They improve the quality of our life. They save us money. They create jobs. That's your city's plan. Pioneering plan, great plan, I quote it everywhere. What we do matters. What you do here in Fort Collins matters. What we do in Colorado matters. If you took us out as a separate nation and said, do our emissions matter? Yes. 212 nations, almost all of them put out less pollution than we do. And you know what? A lot of those nations are doing things to bring down their emissions in a way that our country is not yet doing. What we do in this state can in fact make a big difference. And the way we're going, our emissions are going up. This is an emissions inventory done a few years ago, and it shows actual emissions at the beginning. The scale's missing, was 1990 on the left, 2020 on the right. Clearly projections going forward. The overall difference is an 80% increase if we keep going on the way that we are going. So that's certainly not getting down on the overall global chart the way that we want to be doing. But it's possible to do that. 4 years ago, the Rocky Mountain Climate Organization convened a blue ribbon panel to develop recommendations on what we can do in the state to bring down emissions. The blue line is that projection from the previous slide that I showed you. The green line coming down is the analyzed results of some of the recommendations that came out of this panel. Only 3/4 of them were actually analyzed because they couldn't all be figured out in numerical terms. The black dot is what the panel recommended as a statewide goal, 20% reduction by 2020 compared to the 2005 level, same goal that your city now has as a city goal. The analyzed emission reductions would get us 3/4 of the way there. And they're not wacky things. Your mayor, who played a major part in all of this, called them balanced, reasonable, and I think that is in fact the case. Some of these have been adopted, not all of them have. If we were to do all of them, we would bring down our emissions and we would save ourselves a ton of money. I forget, $12 billion we would save by 2020 within the state. Real money. Because most of the measures that the panel recommended would save money. Those that are above the axis would cost money on net, but would reduce emissions. Most would clearly bring down expenses. As you know from the things you're doing in your businesses, you can save money doing this stuff. If you added all this together, state by state by state by state, and said, would that be enough? Pretty darn close. That's what this chart shows. If you took state action plans that have been developed, aggregated them for the whole country, the only thing that would need to be done by the federal government is that dark red little wedge in there, things that are beyond the ability of states. And even without that, we get awfully close to going back to the 1990 levels. We can, in fact, do this. And again, we can save money doing that. Well, we haven't done all of it, as we well know. And there are many reasons why we haven't done all of it. It is absolutely not the science. The science is really very clear. There's a lot of uncertainty about some of the details and particular projections, but the basis of the science is very solid. The economics is also very solid. It's much more a political question, and this quote also attributes to a lack of leadership. That one I'm not so sure about. It's always easy to say the problem is we don't have the leaders that we should be having. Well, that was John Adams on the way to the First Continental Congress, an assemblage of demigods, people whose pictures we have in our wallets on our dollar bills. Great people. I like this instead. And this is from a team that was developing new engineering solutions for vehicles. We are the answer. And I think we can provide the leadership, and I think you are doing that here. My favorite climatologist, I find lots of ways to quote him, is Abraham Lincoln, because a lot of what he dealt with was so hard. And by comparison, what we're dealing with the climate is awfully easy, I think. And the solution ultimately is the same, though. You have to think anew, and you have to act anew. And it begins with thinking anew. Once we decide we want to do this, the rest really follows. The acting part is less of a hurdle than the thinking anew part, I think. And again, I want to get back to, I applaud you, because what you're doing here is demonstrating that it can be done. You are heroes. I go and talk around the state about what you're doing here, and beyond the state too. If we get businesses across the state and across the region to be doing what you're doing, we will be a long ways there. It won't be all of it. The government has to do it. It can't all be voluntary. But the government can't do it by itself either. It takes voluntary actions. You as businesses, we as individuals, all of us have to do this, but we can do it. And the success that you demonstrate is a model that I and others hold up to inspire others to act. So you are my heroes, and I thank you. And it is a great honor to come and celebrate your 10th year. Thank you. Do you want to have questions, or could you all hear the question? Okay, let me repeat for the recording at least. What are the tools that we need? What are the most important tools? The questioner in particular mentioned cap and trade and voluntary actions, but what are the tools we need to do? There is no one single bullet other than thinking anew. It takes a lot of things. The pollution we put up comes from nearly everything we do. So we really have to have actions that address things across the board. We need government regulations. We need them at the federal, state, and local level. That alone will not be enough. We need voluntary actions by us as individuals and as businesses. You mentioned cap and trade. I think that many of the national environmental groups have done themselves and us a disservice by putting too much emphasis on that one silver bullet. I don't think there is any one silver bullet. And that is complex and difficult and hard to explain and hard to sell people on. We may well do better if we just focus on conventional regulations of the most important sources, targeting that. People support regulation of pollution, and this is what this is. We have a Clean Air Act that provides a framework and examples and much authority that can be brought to bear that people, most people will support a lot more readily than they will a cap and trade. People don't know what that is, and there's a lot of uncertainty about how you do the trading and you get actual emissions that are measurable and verifiable and going to last at the end and all that. I'm not arguing against cap and trade. I'm just saying that certainly is not the silver bullet as far as I'm concerned. This chart shows the source of the emissions we have in our state. Not easy to see from where you're sitting. The blue at the bottom is from our power generation, our consumption of electricity. That is our biggest source in the state. It is projected to be going up. This is under current law prior to the last improvement in the renewable portfolio standard. So we are doing better than this would show. That was a recommendation that was made by our Climate Action Panel that we convened that the legislature approved in this last year. I'll take a little bit of credit for that. Not us, but the panel who worked on that. That is by far the biggest hunk. It is the electrons that we are consuming. Transportation is up at the very top. There's a couple different transportation factors in there. Transportation is significant, and how we heat and cool our homes is significant. The cooling is in the electricity. The heating sometimes is, but more often is natural gas, and that's a significant piece of it. If you actually want to see numbers in a way that you can understand them, you can go to our website, RockyMountainClimate.org. It's quite easy to see them there, and it's very helpful to know what we have to deal with. And again, your city is a leader time after time after time. Not every city has, as John's pointing out, the sources for your own jurisdiction the way that you do. If you want to know what we're doing here, you can go and look on your city's page. The question is whether climate change is part of the curriculum in our public schools. I'm not sure you specified public, but I will add that. It is not that I know of. If anybody knows otherwise, please tell me so. Individual teachers certainly talk about it, but I do not believe that in our state it is part of any school district's established curriculum as something that needs to be taught by the teachers. And the question again is, should there be advocacy? Can there be advocacy to get that added to the curriculum? And absolutely, and I wish that our organization had the resources to do it. We have not yet been able to take that on. It is something that's decided at a school district by school district basis. Anybody here can, figure out who's on the school board and go and make some presentations. Hard to think that it should not be part of our curriculum. Excellent question. And the question is, what do I recommend sending a skeptic to? There is one document that I just cannot recommend any more highly than I do, by the U.S. government. Many of these graphics are taken from it. If you do a Google or other search for global climate change impacts on the United States, that is the title of the document. It is done by the U.S. Global Change Research Program. You can Google that and get there. It is a 2009 national assessment. It is far and away the most readable, accurate, well-done thing. It is, I forget, it may be 200 pages. I don't think quite that much. 150, let us say, so it's not a pamphlet. There are some documents you can find from that government website that are 12 points that everybody should know, but if you're a skeptic, you're not going to be persuaded by 12 points. But that document really is, in every respect that I know, accurate. It is comprehensive. It is highly readable. I've stopped pointing people to anywhere else, and I always point them there. If I can very briefly paraphrase the question, make sure everybody hears it, is what do we do about the other countries, large countries in particular, China, India, that are not reducing emissions and are rapidly growing and can't solve the problem without them? My answer is that we need to do our share. And if we do our share, that will make an enormous difference. Now, our government certainly should be entering into international agreements that gets an international framework for addressing that. I don't want to set that aside or diminish that at all. But until the United States of America does its share, the rest of the world is throwing up their hands saying, why should we do something when you, who have put up the most pollution, warmed the planet the most already, are continuing to put up as much as any other country except China, which is just now edged ahead of us, even though our population is so much smaller than China. We have 4.5% of the world's population. We put up 25% of the heat-trapping gases. We are the superpower. People look at us and say, we can't solve it unless you do it. So I think we should be doing our share. That is the single most important thing. And what you're doing here matters in making that happen at a national level. You are in an award-winning program for very good reason. It's a good program. The success that you demonstrate shows other people that things can be done and they don't cause economic hardship, they produce economic benefits. Your numbers have grown here over 10 years. I would love to see this program done elsewhere. That will make it a lot easier for our political figures to break out of the deadlock that they have by being able to point to, here are folks who have reduced emissions and have saved money, have created jobs. This can be done. This is not the end of our economy if we take this on. In fact, our economy is really going to get hammered if we lose our snow and our water and everything else. So what you are doing is absolutely part of the answer. Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate the chance to come up. I wish you all the success in the world as you keep doing the great things that you're doing. Thank you.